Hi all. Okay, so this one, I had planned on just going over this stuff here. Just an overview of downloading Kali. But as I worked on it, I kind of got carried away. There's a few important tips up here. And then down below, we get into, I guess you can call it the history of Linux. There's a few other things in here too. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this. I'll skim through it quickly. Some of the things we might come back to later on. Earlier, we looked at a few books. I'd like to bring up, look for thick books. At least 300 to 400 pages or more. The thinner books may be great if covering a specialized topic, but books, especially in the computer books these days, maybe just in the last 10 years or so, they're making thin books. And I kind of think of them as just a money grab. They throw something together real quick, throw a fancy cover on the front, and charge you $30-40 for it. So it might be a great book if it covers a niche topic, but just be aware of that type of thing. Okay, so there's something called a 3-letter extension on a file. And usually it's turned off by default. You can turn it off and on in the folder options. So like here, we're in my Kali Live download folder. And you can see this one's got a JPEG extension. This one's got a text extension. I think when you first install Windows, those are turned off. Most people don't want to see them. But if you go to folder options, view tab, options, and let's see here, folder options, view, and then here, hide extensions for known file types. So if I put a check mark here and click apply, you see now I don't see the extensions. I personally prefer to see the extensions. So that's one of the first things I do, is I uncheck that. Hide extensions for known file types. Okay, so now I see the extensions. We're mainly talking about Kali Linux for cybersecurity, but I think Red Hat Linux is probably your best bet for finding an introductory job in Linux. Kali and cybersecurity, that's an advanced topic. I've recommended Red Hat for years. I started teaching computers mid-90s or so, late 90s, and I've always pointed people to Red Hat. We'll talk more on that later. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great versions of Linux. Kali is one of the best ones because it comes loaded with practically all of the cybersecurity apps. You don't have to load them. They're already there. but I just thought I'd bring that up. We'll go Google AI. Does Red Hat Linux come with technical help? So Google AI, does Red Hat Linux come with technical help? So this is what I wanted to show you. Yes, Red Hat Enterprise Linux comes with extensive technical help, but the level of support you receive depends directly on the type of subscription you purchase. And then there's support tiers. Okay, so that's something you can check out. Can Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL, be used in productions? We talked about that earlier, and I had said no, it's mainly for teaching and experimenting. And here it says no, Microsoft explicitly states that Windows Subsystem for Linux is not recommended for production environments. So that's the word they mean for business. So this production, that's a fancy word they use for being used in business. It's not recommended for production environments. Does Windows 10 Home come with PowerShell? Yes, it does. Short answer. I've always bought Windows Pro, and I was surprised PowerShell came with the Home Edition. Yes, Windows 10 Home comes with PowerShell pre-installed, which makes sense because you still need to do the administration, whatever version of Windows you have. We talked about PuTTY. Here's the actual link to it. It's got this weird website name. That's how you can recognize that. Okay, so here's number one. And we kind of talked about this already, what we're going to do in this file. So for our purposes, all we want Kali for is to learn the Linux basics, which is the Kali Linux desktop, the Kali Linux GUI apps. GUI is just a fancy word for graphical user interface. GUI. And that's just your basic desktop. You click on folders and click on buttons. That's what they mean by GUI. And then the Kali Linux command line. That would be like the Windows black screen. You're always typing in text. So the overview of the process, that's what we're doing here. We're going to use Windows 10 to create our Kali Linux USB, but you can create it on many other systems too. We're going to download QBitTorrent. We're going to download Rufus. We're going to download KaliLive.iso. ISO is the 3-letter extension on the Kali file. That's the operating system. And ISO just stands for International Standards Organization. Then we use PowerShell to run a checksum on the ISO file to make sure it's not corrupt. Then we check your PC's BIOS settings. And I probably want to spend a little time on that in case you've never messed with your BIOS. Then you get a pretty good introduction to it. Then we use Rufus to actually take the Kali ISO and write it to a thumb drive. Then we'll boot the Kali thumb drive. And then we'll learn the Kali desktop, learn the Kali command line, and then we'll start with the book Unix Made Easy. So with that book, what I'm thinking is a chapter a week, give or take a little bit, maybe every 2 weeks. And then we'll do other stuff along the way too. Like we'll do a chapter in one video, and then a second video for the week we'll do something else that may or may not have to do with the book. So the overview of downloading Kali, you go to the website, click on downloads, click on Kali Live. But there are many more steps to consider, and that's why we're doing this file. There are many ways to set up a live OS. You can do it on a DVD. I used to do it on a CD. They were small enough to fit on a CD. And then thumb drives are popular now because they're not expensive. Or I think you can boot them off the network too. Can I boot Kali Live off a network? Yes, you can boot Kali Linux Live over a network. So at this time, for very beginners, I think the easiest way is to create a bootable USB. USBs are kind of cheap, or at least they used to be. And not everybody has a DVD or a CD player in their computer. And even if you do, if you don't have a writable DVD or CD, you got to spend $20 to go out and buy some blanks. I think for most people, we have a USB laying around that you can use. So, back in the 90s, in 15 minutes, minus the download time, we could download the ISO, burn it to a CD with any CD burner. Of course, your CD burner had to be able to burn an ISO. Some did, some didn't. Restart the PC to boot to the CD, and you had a full Linux operating system running in RAM. And I think with some versions of Linux, you can still do that now. But I just wanted to take a different approach and go over a few other topics along the way. These days, I don't see an option to just download a simple Kali ISO. Other Linux distros, a distro is a fancy word, is an abbreviated word for distributions. That's just what they call the versions of Linux. Linux distros. What versions of Linux are there? Other versions might offer a simple ISO for download. In cybersecurity, you should be familiar with most Linux distros, including embedded Linux. Linux magazines and rarely Linux books used to come with a live DVD of Linux in the back. You go to the bookstore, check out the Linux magazines, and see what version, see what distro they have on the CD, and it would actually be a live DVD. If you don't want to buy the magazines, check the libraries to see if they have the Linux magazines. The smaller libraries probably won't, but the bigger ones might. If you're able to go to a college library, you might find them there too. Okay, so in Google AI, what are the Linux distributions? So Linux distributions or distros are complete operating systems built on top of the Linux kernel. Okay, so just skimming through these: Debian, Red Hat, Arch, Mint, Ubuntu, Zorin, Rocky, Alma, Fedora, Arch, Gentoo, Kali, Lubuntu, Bazite. Okay, so you can see there's a lot. So they're saying these are the major ones. So we'll go full list of Linux distributions. There are over 600 active Linux distributions. So I thought there was a lot more. So it would be impossible to know all of these. Plus, once you know one, they're all kind of the same. Slackware is one of the classic ones. SUSE was a popular one in my younger days. Here's a wiki page with the list of the distributions. So you can see there's a lot of them. That's all I'm trying to show you here. Not looking at every little name. So in general, I've always recommended Red Hat to all of my students, because that's your best chance at getting a job. Now, a lot of companies use the other versions too, but Red Hat, you can't go wrong. The free version of Red Hat is called Fedora. Fedora, and you download it from fedoraproject.org. And then we've already talked about these: Debian, Slackware, Fedora. Fedora are a few that I would consider classic, or that were popular when I was younger. We're talking the 90s. I think the fella that I took most of my computer courses from, the computer programming and the Unix classes and things like that, I think he used Slackware for his classrooms. Okay, so Linux distros have desktops. GUI desktops, folders and menus and buttons to click on. The desktops have names. You can switch between desktops. You're not stuck with one. GNOME is like the standard. That's like the main desktop, GNOME. And KDE is one of the popular ones. It's more exotic. So GNOME is the standard, KDE more exotic. You can switch back and forth. And Kali has their own desktop. GNU, some people pronounce it GNU. Some people just call it GNU. It's a GNU General Public License. That's how the Linux is given away for free. So in Google AI, we'll look up GNU. So GNU General Public License. GNU General Public License is the world's most popular copyright-free software license. And along with that, there's open software. Open source software, OSS, is software with source code that anyone can inspect, modify, and enhance. What is Open Linux? Open Linux is not a standalone operating system, but rather a descriptive phrase for Linux, which is inherently a free and open source operating system. And I only brought that up because when you look at some of the names on the Linux distros, they'll say open. Let's see, is Red Hat Open Linux? Yes, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL. You'll see that on the books on Amazon. Is an open source Linux distribution, but is not completely free or unrestricted. My understanding is Red Hat took Linux, polished it up a little bit, and then they charge for it. It's not free because they took Linux and made it better, and they charge you for tech help. Like the free version of Red Hat. Red Hat's community-driven testing ground is 100% free and open, acting as the foundation where cutting-edge software is shaped before ever reaching enterprise status. Something else I wanted to bring up was BSD. It's a version of Unix that came from Berkeley out in California. Berkeley University of California. This is like one of the originals. Yes, Berkeley BSD was originally a direct derivative of AT&T Unix. But modern BSD operating systems are legally classified as Unix-like. Unix versus Linux. Whether BSD is considered a true Unix depends on whether you look at it from a genealogical code heritage or legal trademark standpoint. They also have OpenBSD. They came out with OpenBSD later. So OpenBSD is a free open source Unix-like operating system based on the Berkeley software distribution, BSD. For our purposes, Unix and Linux, more or less the same thing. When you go to the command line, the commands will be the same. It's the code in the operating system that's different. It's a Unix operating system as opposed to a Linux operating system. When I say that in class, Unix and Linux is basically the same, all the old timers start coughing because they know, how this stuff works. But I'm just trying to simplify things so people can understand it. OpenBSD is a direct descendant of Unix. It is based on 4.4 BSD, released from the University of California, Berkeley. It is a complete Unix-like operating system. Is OpenBSD Linux? No, OpenBSD is not Linux, While they look similar and run many of the same programs, they are completely separate operating systems with different histories, development models, and philosophies. There's another one I wanted to bring up called Solaris. Solaris was one of the big versions of Unix when I first got into this stuff. Solaris Unix was made by a company called Sun. And when I first got into computers, Solaris sold for $60,000. And they sent you a handful of CDs to install it. It was derived directly from Unix System 5 Release 4. That's like one of the classic versions of Unix. And it was abbreviated to System 5 Release 4. Solaris remains a vital pillar for legacy database management, high-performance computing, and mission-critical financial or telecommunication systems. So, as far as I know, you can still download it. When the internet got popular, mid-90s, late 90s, everything was going open, and they started giving Solaris out for free. They called it Open Solaris. Okay, so now I want to talk about these three people. There's a lot of important people in the computer business, but I bumped into these names here. Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, and Linus Torvalds. Linus is the one that actually invented Linux. And it started out as a college project. He was working on it, and he put it out on the internet and said, hey, can I get some help? And he got a lot of help. And that's how they invented Linux. So here, who invented Unix? So Unix was invented by Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, 1969 at AT&T Bell Labs. It says originally Unix was written in low-level assembly language. Dennis Ritchie invented the C programming language, 1973. And Thompson completely rewrote the Unix kernel in C. So the main part of Linux is the kernel. That's like the heart of the operating system. So Ken Thompson, American computer science pioneer, co-created Unix, invented B operating language, a direct predecessor to C, and co-designed the modern Go language, programming language. He spent most of his career at AT&T Bell Labs. Dennis Ritchie, American computer scientist, invented C, working at AT&T Bell Labs. Linus Torvalds is a Finnish-American software engineer who created Linux, the open source operating system kernel, and Git, the world's most popular open source management system. Explain the difference between Unix and Linux. Bunch of legal stuff. Enough of that. How much RAM does Kali Linux use when running a live version off a USB thumb drive? So you got to get a thumb drive